Goosebumps, The Blob That Ate Everyone by R.L Stine. Chapter 1. I used to believe in monsters, Alex said. She pushed her glasses up on her nose. Her nose twitched. With her pink face and round cheeks, she looked like a tall, blonde bunny rabbit. When I was little, I thought that a monster lived in my sock drawer, Alex told me. You won't believe this, Zachy, but I'd never opened that drawer. I used to wear my sneakers without socks. Sometimes I tried to go barefoot to kindergarten. I was too scared to open that drawer. I knew the sock monster would bite my hand off. She laughed. Alex has the strangest laugh. It sounds more like a whistle than a laugh. Wee! Wee! She shook her head, and her blonde ponytail shook with her. Now that I'm 12, I'm a lot smarter, she said. Now I know that there is no such thing as monsters. That's what Alex said to me 2 seconds before we were attacked by the monster. It was spring vacation, and Alex and I were out collecting things. That's what we do when we can't think of anything better. Sometimes we collect weird-looking weeds. Sometimes we collect bugs or odd-shaped leaves. Once we collected stones that looked like famous people. That didn't last long. We couldn't find too many. If you get the idea that Norwood Village is a boring town, you're right. I mean, it was boring until the monster attacked. Alex Erosi lived next door to me. She is my best friend. Adam Levine, who lives across town, is my best friend too. I think a person should have a lot of best friends. I'm not sure why Alex has a boy's name. I think it's short for Alexandria, but she won't tell me. She complains about her name all the time, and it gets her in a lot of trouble. Last year at school, Alex was assigned to a boys' gym class, and she gets mails addressed to Mr. Alex Erosi. Sometimes people have trouble with my name too. Zachy Beauchamp. My last name is pronounced Beecham, but no one ever knows how to say it. Why am I going on about names like this? I think I know why. You see, when the blob monster attacked, I was so scared I forgot my own name. Alex and I had decided to collect worms. Only purple worms, no brown ones. That made the search more interesting. It had rained the day before, a long, steady spring rain. Our backyards were still soft and spongy. The worms were coming up for air. They poked through the wet grass and wriggled onto the driveway. We were both crouched down, searching for purple ones, when I heard a loud squishy sound behind me. I spun around quickly and gasped when I saw the monster. Alex, look! She turned too, and a whistling sound escaped her mouth. Whee! Only this time, she was not laughing. I dropped the worm I had been carrying and took a big step back. It looks like a giant human heart, Alex cried. She was right. The monster made another loud squish as it bounced over the grass towards us. It bounced like a giant beach ball, taller than Alex and me, nearly as tall as the garage. It was pink, wet, and throbbing. Brum, brum, brum. It pulsed like a heart. It had 2 tiny black eyes. The eyes glowed and stared straight ahead. On top of the pink blob, I thought I saw curled up snakes. But as I stared in horror, I realized they weren't snakes. They were thick purple veins, arteries tied together in a knot. Brum, brum, brum. The monster throbbed and bounced. Ugh. I groaned as I saw the sticky trail of white slime it left behind on the grass. Alex and I were taking giant steps backward. We didn't want to turn our backs on this ugly thing. Terrified groans escaped my throat. My heart had to be pounding 100 miles an hour. I took another step back, and then another. And as I backed away, I saw a crack open up in the creature's middle. At first, I thought the pink blob was cracking apart. But as the crack grew wider, I realized I was staring at its mouth. The mouth opened wider. Wider. Wide enough to swallow a human. And then a fat purple tongue plopped out. The tongue made a wet splat as it hit the grass. Ugh. I groaned again. My stomach lurched, and I nearly lost my lunch. The end of the tongue was shaped like a shovel. A fat, sticky purple shovel. To shovel people into the gaping mouth? Thick white slime poured from the monster's mouth. It's drooling, I choked out. Run, Alex cried. I turned and tripped on the edge of the driveway. I landed hard on my elbows and knees, and I looked back, in time to see the drooling pink mouth open wider as the tongue wrapped around me, pulling me in. Chapter 2. Alex stared at me, her mouth open wide. Zachy, that is awesome, she declared. Adam scratched his curly black hair and made a face. You call that scary? He rolled his eyes. That's about as scary as Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I held the pages of my story in one hand. I rolled them up and took a swing at Adam with them. He laughed and ducked out of my reach. That is an awesome story, Alex repeated. What do you call it? Adventure of the Blob Monster, I told her. Oh, wow. Did you think that up all by yourself? Adam exclaimed sarcastically. Alex gave Adam a hard shove that sent him tumbling onto the couch. Give Zachy a break, she muttered. The three of us were hanging out in Adam's house. We were squeezed into what his parents called the rec room. The room is so small. Only a couch and a TV fit. It was spring vacation, and we were hanging out because we didn't know what else to do. The night before, I stayed up till midnight working on my scary story about the blob monster. I want to be a writer when I grow up. I write scary stories all the time. Then I read them to Alex and Adam. They always react in the same way. Alex always likes my stories. She thinks they're really scary. She says that my stories are so good, they give her nightmares. Adam always says my stories aren't scary at all. He says he can write better stories with one hand tied behind his back. But he never does. Adam is big, red-cheeked, and chubby. He looks a little like a bear. He likes to punch people and wrestle around, just for fun. He's actually a good guy. He just never likes my stories. What's wrong with this story? I asked him. The three of us were crammed onto the couch now. There was nowhere else to sit. Stories never scare me, Adam replied. He picked an ant off the couch arm, put it in between his thumb and finger, and shot it at me. He missed. I thought the story was really scary, Alex said. I thought you had really good description. I never get scared by books or stories, Adam insisted. Especially stories about dumb monsters. Well, what does scare you? Alex demanded. Nothing, Adam bragged. I don't get scared by movies either. Nothing ever scares me. And then he opened his mouth wide in a scream of horror. All three of us did. We leapt off the couch as a terrifying screech rang through the room, and a black shadow swept over the floor. Chapter 3. The shadow swooped by our feet so fast I could barely see it. I felt something brush my ankle, something soft and ghost-like. Ugh! Adam cried out. I heard hurried footsteps from the living room. Mr. Levine, Adam's dad, burst into the doorway. With his curly black hair and bear-like round body, Mr. Levin looks a lot like Adam. "Sorry about that," he exclaimed. "I stepped on the cat. Did it run past here?" We didn't answer him. We were so stunned that we all burst out laughing. Mr. Levin frowned at us. "I don't see what's so funny," he muttered. He spotted the cat hiding beside the couch. He picked it up and hurried away. The three of us dropped back onto the couch. I was still breathing hard, and I could still feel the brush of the cat on my ankle. "See, Zachy?" Adam cried. He slapped me hard on the back, so hard that I nearly fell off the couch. "That was a lot scarier than any story you could write." "No way," I insisted. "I can write a scarier story than that. That dumb cat just surprised us." Alex pulled off her glasses and wiped the lenses on her t-shirt. "What a screech that cat made," she exclaimed, shaking her head. "I wasn't scared at all," Adam claimed. "I was just trying to scare you guys." He reached over and rubbed the palm of his hand back and forth over my head. "Don't you hate it when people do that?" I slugged him as hard as I could. He only laughed. Alex and I stayed for dinner. Miss Levin is a great cook. We always try to be around Adam's house at dinner time because she always invites us to stay. It was dark by the time Alex and I started to walk home. We'd had thunderstorms the day before and most of today. The lawns glistened from the rain. The wet street reflected the glow of streetlights. I could hear the crackle of thunder somewhere far away. As Alex and I made our way along the sidewalk, cold rainwater dripped on us from the trees. Adam lives on the other side of Norwood Village, but it isn't a very long walk, only about 15 minutes. We walked for about 5 minutes when we came to a row of little shops. "Hey!" I cried out when the antique store on the corner came into view. It's been totaled." "It looks as if a bomb hit it," Alex exclaimed. We stayed on the corner, staring across the street at it. Part of the roof had fallen in. All the windows were shattered. One wall nearly caved in. The shingles on the walls and the roof had been burned black. "Was it a fire?" I wondered, leading the way across the street. "Lightning," a woman's voice replied. I turned to see 2 young women on the sidewalk beside the store. "It was struck by lightning. Yesterday, during the big storm, the lightning started a huge fire," one of them said. "What a mess," the other woman sighed. She pulled car keys from her purse. The 2 women disappeared around the corner, tisk-tisking about the store. Alex and I stepped up to the front. "Ugh, it stinks," Alex groaned, holding her nose. "It just smells bad," I replied. I glanced down and saw that I had stepped into a deep puddle. I jumped back. "It's soaked everywhere. From the fire hoses, I guess," Alex murmured. A gust of wind made the front door bang. "It's open!" I exclaimed. The door had been taped shut, but the tape had broken off. A large yellow sign on the door declared in big black letters, "Danger, keep out." "Alex, let's take a peek," I urged. "No way! Zachy, stop!" Alex cried. Too late. I was already inside. Chapter 4. I took a couple of steps into the shop and waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Water dripped everywhere. An entire wall of shelves had toppled over. Broken vases, lamps, and small statues lay scattered over the puddled floor. "Zachy!" Alex grabbed my shoulder. "Zachy, get out of there!" she whispered. "This is really dangerous." "Leave the door open," I told her. "We need the light from the street." "But what do you want to see?" Her voice echoed over the plunk, plunk, plunk of dripping water. She grabbed my other arm and started to tug me out. "Come on, you saw the sign. The whole building may fall on us." I jerked my arm away. My sneakers squished as I walked. The carpet was soaked. I just want to look around for 1 second, I told her impatiently. This is cool. It isn't cool. It's really stupid, she argued. A row of ugly antique masks stared at us from one wall. The masks were tilted at odd angles. Other masks stared up from where they had fallen on the floor. A tall wooden clock had its face burned black. Wooden duck decoys lay on their sides, burned and cracked. A creaking sound overhead made me jump. I heard Alex gasp. I raised my eyes to the ceiling. Part of it had fallen in. Was the rest about to collapse on top of us? Zachy, let's go, Alex urged. She backed up towards the door. Her shoes squished over the soaked carpet. The door banged shut behind us. I turned and saw the wind blow it back open. Plink, plink. Cold water dripped on my shoulder. If you don't come, I'm going without you, Alex called. I mean it, Zachy. Okay, I muttered. I'm coming. I just wanted to check out what happened. Hurry, Alex urged. She was halfway out the door. I turned and started to follow her, but I stopped when something on a high shelf caught my eye. Hey, Alex, look. I pointed up to an old typewriter. Wow, my dad used to have one like that when I was real little. Zachy, I'm leaving, Alex warned. I love old typewriters. Look, Alex, I cried. I don't think the fire hurt it. I think it's in good shape. I just have to check it out, okay? I didn't wait for her to reply. I crossed the room, stepped up to the shelf, stood on tiptoe, and reached for the old typewriter. Ow! I felt a hard shock of pain. It shot through my body. It stunned me. It took away my breath. Over my stunned cry, I heard the sharp crackle of electricity, and I bent over, helpless, as a bright blue flame shot around my body. Chapter 5. Blue. I saw only blue, the deepest blue I have ever seen. I'm floating in the sky, I realized. I'm weightless, and I'm floating in the blue sky. The blue faded to white. Was I still floating? Was I moving at all? Was I breathing? I struggled to speak, to shout, to make any kind of sound. The white faded quickly, to gray, then black. I heard myself moan. It's dark, so dark now. I was surrounded by darkness. I blinked again, and realized I was staring into the darkness of the ruined antique shop. Zachy? Zachy? I heard my name. I heard Alex repeating my name. I cleared my throat. I sat up. My eyes darted around the store. Zachy, are you okay? I tried to shake my dizziness away. My whole body tingled and hummed, as if an electrical current were running through me. How did I get on the floor? I asked weakly. Alex leaned over me, one hand on my shoulder. You got a shock, she said, squinting hard at me through her glasses. There must be a wire down or something. I rubbed the back of my neck. I couldn't stop the strange tingling or the steady hum in my ears. Wow, I murmured. It was a real bad shock. I was so scared you were inside a blue flame. Your whole body, it turned bright blue. Wow, I repeated, still fighting the dizziness. Your hands shot up in the air, Alex continued. And then you bent in two, fell to the floor. I thought... Her voice trailed off. Plink, plink. I could hear the drip of water again. The hum in my ears had faded. I pulled myself shakily to my feet. I stretched my arms over my head, trying to stop the strange tingling. The old typewriter caught my eye again. "Zachy, what are you doing?" Alex cried. I moved carefully to the shelf, stepping around a puddle of water on the carpet. I took a deep breath, stretched up on tiptoe, and pulled the old typewriter down. "Whoa, it weighs a ton," I cried. "It's solid metal." I held it in my arms and examined it. The sleek black surface caught the glow of the streetlight outside the door. The round keys poked up towards me. "It's awesome!" I exclaimed. "This typewriter, Alex, it's perfect for writing scary stories on." "Are you crazy?" Alex declared. "Zachy, I think that electric shock messed up your brain." "But look at it. It's perfect. Perfect," I insisted excitedly. Alex rolled her eyes. "You have a brand new computer at home, and your mom gave you her old printer, remember?" she reminded me. I know, I muttered. "So what do you need a creaky old typewriter for?" "I need it because it's perfect," I told her. "Perfect, perfect." "Stop repeating that word. Are you sure you're feeling okay? That was a horrible shock. Maybe I should call your parents." No, I'm fine," I insisted. The typewriter was growing heavy in my arms. "Let's just go." Lugging the typewriter, I started to the door, but Alex blocked my path. "You can't just take it. It doesn't belong to you. That's stealing," she scolded. I made a face at her. "Alex, don't be dumb. Everything in this store is wrecked. Nobody's gonna care if I take." I stopped with a gasp when I heard the squish of shoes on wet carpet. Then I heard a cough. I turned to Alex, caught the fear on her face. She had heard the sound too. "Zachy, we're not alone in here." Chapter 6. Another squishy footstep. Closer. A chill swept down my back. I nearly dropped the typewriter. "Hide," I whispered. I didn't need to suggest it. Alex was already slipping behind a tall display shelf. I set the typewriter down on the floor. Then I crept behind the shelf and huddled close to Alex. I heard another cough. Then a circle of light moved across the wet carpet, the pale yellow beam of a flashlight. The light slid over the floor. Then it started to climb the display case. Alex and I ducked low. The circle of light washed over our heads. My legs were trembling. I gripped the back of the case with both hands to keep myself from falling over. "Hello?" A voice called. A woman's voice. "Hello? Is someone in here?" Alex turned to me. She motioned with her head. She was silently asking if we should step out and show ourselves. I shook my head no. How could we explain what we were doing inside the shop? How could we explain why we were hiding? Maybe the woman will leave, I told myself. Maybe she won't find us. Who is she? Does she own the store? I wondered. I peered around the bottom shelf. I could see the woman from the side. She was African American. She had very short, dark hair. She wore a long raincoat. She moved the flashlight beam along the back wall. It lit up the fallen shelf, the broken antiques. Her footsteps slogged over the wet carpet. "Hello? Did someone come in here?" she called. I held my breath. "Please leave," I begged silently. "Please don't catch us here." The woman turned. Her light stopped on the typewriter in the middle of the floor. She kept the light steady, staring at the typewriter. I knew what she was thinking. How did that typewriter get on the floor? Slowly, she raised the light, raised it back to the display shelf. She stared right at us. Could she see us hiding behind the display case? I froze. I pretended to be a statue. Did she see us? No. She muttered something to herself. The light went out. I blinked in the sudden darkness. Her footsteps moved away. I realized I was still holding my breath. I let it out slowly, trying not to make a sound. Silence now, and darkness. No footsteps, no beam of yellow light. The front door banged shut. Alex and I exchanged glances. Was the woman gone? Did she leave the shop? We didn't move. We waited and listened. Silence. Then Alex sneezed. "Gotcha!" the woman cried from somewhere behind us. Chapter 7. A hand grabbed my shoulder, hard. The sleeve of the raincoat brushed my face as the woman tugged me out from behind the shelf. I nearly tripped over the typewriter. The woman held me up by one arm. Alex stepped up beside me. Her ponytail had come undone. Her blonde hair was wild around her face. She kept swallowing hard, making dry clicking sounds with her tongue. I guess she was as frightened as I was. The woman switched her flashlight on. She raised it to my face, then to Alex's. "Were you doing some late-night shopping?" she demanded. "Huh?" I managed to choke out. "The store is closed. Couldn't you tell?" the woman snapped. She was young, pretty. She locked her dark eyes on me. "What are you doing in here?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Nothing," Alex said weakly. "We weren't doing anything." The woman narrowed her eyes at Alex. "Then why were you hiding?" "You frightened us," I stammered, finally finding my voice. "Well, you frightened me too. You frightened me plenty. I was in the back room and..." "We were walking home. We saw the store, how it was wrecked. We just wanted to see what it looked like inside, so we came in, that's all," I explained. The woman lowered the light to the floor. "I see," she said softly. Her shoe made a squishing sound on the carpet. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling behind us. "What a mess," the woman sighed. Her eyes traveled around the ruined shop. "I'm Miss Carter. I own this store. What's left of it." We're sorry," Alex stammered. "You shouldn't be in here," Miss Carter scolded. "It's very dangerous. Some of the electrical wires are down. You didn't touch anything, did you?" "No, not really," Alex replied. "Well, just this old typewriter," I said, gazing down at it. "I wondered how it got down there." "Why did you move it?" Miss Carter said. "I like stories. It's really cool," I told her. "Zachy writes stories," Alex told Miss Carter. "Scary stories." Miss Carter let out a bitter laugh. "Well, you could certainly write a scary story about this place." "I'll bet I could write awesome scary stories on that old typewriter," I said, staring down at it. "You want it?" Miss Carter asked. "Yeah. Is it for sale? How much does it cost?" Miss Carter motioned with one hand. "Take it," she said. "Excuse me?" I didn't think I'd heard her correctly. "Go ahead. Take it. It's yours. For free," she repeated. "Do you mean it? I can have it?" I cried out excitedly. She nodded. "Thank you." I could feel a grin spreading over my face. "Thanks a lot." Miss Carter bent down and picked up something from the floor. "Here," she said. She handed me a fountain pen, a very old-fashioned looking fountain pen, heavy and black with silvery chrome on it. "For me?" I asked, studying the pen. Miss Carter nodded again. She smiled at me. "It's my going out of business special offer. You get a free pen with every typewriter." "Wow!" I exclaimed. Miss Carter moved to the door and held it open. "Now, get out of here, both of you," she ordered. "It really is dangerous in here. I'm leaving too." I hoisted the heavy old typewriter into my arms. Balancing it against my chest, I followed Alex to the door. I felt so happy. I thanked Miss Carter 5 times more. Then Alex and I said goodbye and headed for our homes. The street was still wet. It glowed under the streetlights like a mirror. It didn't look real. The walk home seemed to take forever. The typewriter grew heavier with every step I took. "Weird," Alex muttered when we finally crossed onto our block. "Huh?" I groaned. My arms were about to fall off. The typewriter weighed a ton. "What's weird, Alex?" "The way she gave you that valuable typewriter," Alex replied thoughtfully. "Why was that so weird?" I demanded. "She seemed so eager to give it away. It's almost as if she wanted to get rid of it," Alex said. She headed towards her house, which is next door to mine. My knees buckled as I started up my driveway. My arms ached. My whole body ached. I struggled to hold on to the typewriter. "That's crazy," I muttered. Of course, I didn't know how right Alex was. I didn't know that carrying that old typewriter home would totally ruin my life.